Welcome back everybody to the TheDomCast episode 10. We are well into the first round of the playoffs at this point, which have actually exceeded expectations so far. I say that because you get into the first round and you have series like the Magic and Raptors and Nets and Sixers, and sure, the Nets and Magic had decent regular seasons, but you didn't expect them to put up much of a fight against these teams. And all of a sudden tonight we've got the Magic and Raptors at 1-1, so we'll see what happens with that. And the Nets and Sixers is 2-1, but it's starting to look a little bit more realistic, as even without Joel Embiid last night, you saw Ben Simmons take initiative after the whole Jared Dudley episode. And with two straight blowouts, one without Embiid, it seems like they might be back in control, but we'll see. Anyways, I was only talking about all of this because I just saw a report that said that the playoffs, the ratings for this year are down 26% from last year. That's pretty significant. And there's different theories for why that's happening. Of course, you've got things like LeBron not being in the playoffs, but a lot of people are pointing out to the fact that for casual fans, this first round is really not that great. Warriors and Clippers, that's pretty much a terrible series. Rockets and Jazz, those games have been over by halftime. Most people don't care about the Magic and Raptors. Like I said, so far they've pretty much exceeded expectations, but casual fans, especially ones that just watch to see LeBron James, probably not going to be too happy with what's going on right now as far as the matchups. Anyways, that's a little bit about that. Got a lot of questions here. Hopefully some of them are about the playoffs. I sense that they will be. And we'll start off with T Swiggy, who's asking, can the Sixers really make the finals? I have them as a second round exit in 6 games. And that question just comes from the fact that leading up to this point, a lot of us had 4 teams in the East where we said either of these teams could make the finals and none of us would be surprised. The Sixers kind of came in like midway, pretty much when they got Tobias Harris, because before then I don't think people really thought that. But with the moves they made, and you see they were like the first team to have 4 guys averaging over 17 points a game, I think. So yeah, people were like, yeah, we've got 4 teams on paper that could definitely be in the finals. But here we are now, and I was actually just talking about this the other day. And I think we can kind of shed the Sixers now, to be honest, because with Embiid lumbering around the way he is, I don't think there's a way anyone could seriously believe they're going to make it. Unless there are some significant injuries to like the Raptors or whoever's in the conference finals, Embiid is a really big deal to what they do. Last night they were starting Greg Monroe, and so then you're talking about a situation where you have guys playing off Ben Simmons, then you don't have to worry about Monroe stretching the floor. And of course, you know, you just lose an entire presence with Embiid not being down low, both on offense and defense. So he's not out for the playoffs or anything right now, but he's in and out. Even in the games that he's played, he looks like he's kind of struggling, just running a bit, and he had to take last night's game off. This is being recorded on a Friday, by the way, so last night was the game 3 between the Sixers and Nets. And honestly, from what I know about Embiid's condition, this isn't anything that's just gonna get better throughout the playoffs. Tendonitis in the knee, I really think that's more so, that's something he's probably going to need to get cleaned out this summer. He's going to have probably an operation to make that better. Maybe, I don't know how they make those decisions, if they're actually going to go in or not. But yeah, no, for a team trying to make a finals run and probably their best player is going to be in and out throughout this or not 100%, I have a hard time seeing them there or seeing them have a realistic chance for it. And that's really part of why my prediction sounded the way they did. Because originally you had me saying I had the Sixers sweeping the Nets, and as you see in these last 2 performances, that's really what I expected, these last 2 performances. But I said that before I even knew Embiid was really struggling the way he was. So yeah, long story short, to answer your question, no. I think we're kind of down to like the Raptors, Bucks, and even the Celtics right now are kind of struggling to score against the Pacers. They're taking a little bit longer to put them away than I'm really comfortable with if I'm thinking about them making a finals run. So I think we're kind of looking at Raptors and Bucks, maybe even leaning towards Bucks, but we will see. Like I said, nothing is ever as you expect in the playoffs, and that's why I was so surprised about the 26%, them being down 26% in ratings, because I've been enjoying these series, but again, for casual fans, I could definitely see how this would not be appealing. So let's move on to the Blazers. Jordan is talking about if the Blazers have a realistic chance of making it past the first round this time. Bit of a vague question. Yeah, of course. With what's going on right now, I really just wanted to use that question to get into talking about them because Lillard is on a crusade right now, man. I'll tell you, I respect so much what's going on with that because you come into this series where it's the Blazers and Thunder. Lillard's got history with Westbrook. Have you guys seen that clip where Westbrook is talking about the specific words he uses talking to Damian Lillard is saying, I've been busting your ass for years. talking about their matchups. He's like, yeah, I've been busting your ass for years. So to get to the playoffs where things really count, and I'm going to say the Thunder were favored to win that series because you've got Westbrook, Paul George. Thunder were making a surge earlier on, or middle towards the end of the season. Blazers were struggling with some injuries with McCollum, and then Nurkic actually goes out. So now we get to this series where we're saying, yeah, this is going to be a great series, but we expect the Thunder to win, and all of a sudden, they're down 2-0. Now, I do want to say, because that game is tonight, so you will see this after whatever happens tonight, but this could easily become a 2-2 series by the time OKC is done with their home games. But aside from that, yes, just so much respect to Lillard for what's going on right now, because you can just see it on his face. There's this one instance where Westbrook runs and pulls up for 3, and Lillard doesn't really guard him because Russ is not a great 3-point shooter. So Lillard, he flexes after Westbrook misses it. Then Lillard collects the ball at around half court, takes 2 dribbles, and then pulls up, and for some reason Russ does not guard it. So Lillard makes it, and that just summed up what's been going on in these last 2 games. It was a very epic way to sum up what's happened these last 2 games. And I love seeing things like this because last year we all know how much of a disappointment it was for the Blazers not to just lose in the first round, but to go out the way that they went out. I think last year people could understand the Pelicans beating the Blazers, but for it to just be a straight sweep, like, it was no struggle. And the way Lillard was shut down as well, I'm calling this what's going on right now. To me, this is like his revenge tour, and I'm enjoying it. I want to see how far it goes. Again, I am not overreacting to the first 2 games because I'm very open-minded to the possibility that this may be a tied series in the next couple of games, but so far I am just looking for what happens with Paul George and monitoring his play because I'm so damn disappointed that his shoulder started acting up to the point where we're talking about before playoff games, he's game time decision because he can't lift the shoulder. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he had an operation last summer on his shoulder as well to get it cleaned out, and he said that's why he was playing so well this year. So very disappointed about that because I thought when George was healthy, the Thunder had a very good chance to go to the conference finals. But the way it's going right now, I think no matter who wins, the Blazers or the Thunder, I think they would likely lose the next round to the Nuggets or the Spurs. That's the way I see it. But again, Lillard, he is on a mission, so we'll see what happens. I'm especially happy for him because his whole mentality is that there are things out there that are more important than rings. I personally think if you're a player like him, you got to do what you got to do to go get a title. But, respect. He wants to win his way. He wants to be in Portland when he does it. And Portland, to this point, has not gotten him the help that you would think is necessary for a title. So he's just trying to push through with what he has. I think there's other ways, but if this is the way it's going to be, then I like to see him be somewhat successful. Next question is asking, which current NBA stars would be better suited to be the 3rd best player on a good team? Oh, I can answer this one with no problem. Vucevic. All day. You see what's going on with Vooch right now, and first off, this is his first playoff series, and it's against the Raptors who have very physical and quick, good defensive big men. So on top of the fact that the Raptors are keying in on him, they're pretty much doubling him when he gets the ball. They are not letting him get activated. They're saying somebody else on the Magic is going to have to beat them. And that's cool and all. That is part of the reason why I think, well, he's got to develop as well. Of course, he goes and works on some things this summer, just like Lillard, because that's kind of how the Pelicans were shutting him out last year as well. But especially with Vooch being a big man, I think he benefits from going somewhere like the Mavericks this summer where he will be the 3rd best player. Because Vooch is one of those guys where I don't think he's going to be the best player on a team that goes far. Very good, very talented. He was good for a double-double this season. But when you start talking about taking a team deep into the playoffs, he would definitely benefit from not being the top star on a team where all the defensive focus is going on him. I think he'd be much more comfortable playing around like a Porzingis and Luka. I think that's a good place for him. Next question, will the Spurs make it to the Western Conference Finals? And if you are not aware for some reason, the Spurs right now, they are up 2-1 on the Nuggets, and this is the most awkward 2-7 series I've ever seen in my life. And I understand it because out west seeding sometimes, a lot of the times, really does not matter. And especially this season where it's the Nuggets in the 2nd seed, and a lot of us had already keyed in on that from a distance and said this is not a real contending team. I've been calling them pretenders all year. So the fact that they're up 2-1 right now with a chance to go up 3-1 in the next couple of days, whenever that game is, I don't think anyone is surprised. Now with that being said, the Western Conference Finals. If you go back and watch my prediction video, I had the Nuggets beating them in 6. And that was heavily based off of the Spurs' road performance from the regular season. And also the fact that I did respect the Nuggets as at least a good team, a good enough team to take advantage of something like that where they have home court advantage. But I also did say right after that nobody should be surprised if the Spurs make the conference finals, because if they could overcome the Nuggets the way they are right now, where they were able to steal one on the road that really should have been 2 on the road, I think they've showed everybody enough that they can definitely take these Nuggets out. And then I said that they could easily be in the conference finals, and it's because of the path. They're a good team, but also their path. So if you take the Nuggets this round, you're either playing Portland next round, or you're playing the Thunder, where Paul George is not as good as he was during the regular season, and the Spurs and Thunder had some really good matches. So I looked at that and I said the path is very clear for the Spurs to end up in the Western Conference Finals if certain things shake certain ways. And right now they are shaking out in a way where it really might happen, because they beat the Nuggets and they play Portland next round. I got the Spurs. I think overall they're a better team. And yeah, conference finals, even after being a 7th seed, which is, again, in this year's West, doesn't really mean a whole lot. But yeah, nobody should be surprised if that's what happens here. Speaking of the Spurs, this is definitely a question that I was thinking about last night after watching Derrick White dominating. He had a career high, I believe, 38 points. And this question is asking, do you think Derrick White should start over Dejounte Murray due to the playoffs? So Murray is out with a torn ACL, which happened in like preseason, I believe, very early on in the year. And now you have Derrick White, who is having somewhat of a breakout. So that's interesting, because when the season started, I'm pretty sure Murray was going to be the starter there. But the way it's going, Derrick White has made the most of his opportunity, and I highly doubt anybody's going to come back and take his starting spot next year, especially if they wind up in the Western Conference Finals, and especially with Murray coming off of a torn ACL. I don't see that happening. So yeah, at this rate, Derrick White is going to have that starting spot. And shout out to him, and shout out to the Spurs as well, because this is just what they do. You get this guy who had really no hype in college. He's drafted 29th, so right at the end of the first round. And how many times are the Spurs going to do this, where they just get an absolute stud so far back in the draft? Every team has to model their organization, or at least like their scouting and their development, off of the Spurs. They really need to follow that template, because this is the reason San Antonio has not had to rebuild since they drafted Tim Duncan. They're always drafting quality pieces around him, and then they're able to phase out their stars with some guys that they already drafted. They don't win every year, but they've got to be the most perfect organization in the league. Chris is asking, opinions on Kawhi plus this Clippers roster for next year. Glad that question popped up, because right before I started this, I saw some reports saying that his teammates are actually expecting him to go to the Lakers or the Clippers. Is that real? Are they in the thick of chasing a title right now and they expect their best player to be gone next year? Not 100% sure on that, but we do know that we have no commitment from Kawhi yet. And yeah, if he's on the Clippers next year, and I think they'll be able to get somebody else too if they get him, that could turn out wild. So the Clippers have got their pieces that they don't want to give up, right, for any reason, to make space for anybody. You've got your 6th man of the year in Lou Williams. You got Montrezl Harrell, who could have also had an argument for 6th man if Lou Williams wasn't performing the way that he was. And so then talk about, well, actually at the beginning of the year, the conversation was Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler. Imagine those guys together and on the Clippers, and they're able to maintain some pieces. The Clippers curse will then pretty much be officially over. And it seems like it is an opportunity. Seems like there's an opportunity for something there, especially with Kawhi, because we just don't know what he's doing. He don't say anything about free agency. Nobody ever asks him. So yeah, there's an opportunity there. And especially if he wants to be in LA, if that's just something he really wants to do for whatever reason, which I wouldn't expect from Kawhi. But yeah, he can do that without putting himself in the middle of what's going on in Los Angeles across the hall with the Lakers. Can probably have a better future with the Clippers. That would be very interesting if that happens, and I would be very surprised that he left the Raptors. Speaking of free agency, let's revisit Kemba, because this question is asking about free agency and where will Kemba Walker sign, and I just so happened before I started this to see a report about Kemba, and how he was feeling deflated at the trade deadline, that the Hornets didn't get better, and that the Marc Gasol deal fell apart. Because if you did not know, for a second it seemed like Gasol was going to the Hornets, then it just didn't happen. So to double down on that, the Hornets do not make the playoffs, and he has no reason to believe after all this time that they're just going to go get better this summer. So the conversation has definitely changed up a bit, because earlier in the season we were talking about him possibly staying and him saying how much he wanted to be there, but I was saying to be wary of that anyways, because players are always going to say they would love to stay wherever they are, most of the time anyways. So now we're getting a little bit closer, and I don't know where he's going, but I don't see why he would stay with the Hornets for anything other than money, and I hope he doesn't do that, because we all saw what happened to Carmelo Anthony's legacy when he decided that he was going to take a truckload of money and stay with the Knicks and just let them figure things out, and that was in a year where they hadn't made the playoffs. So here we are years later, and what was once an elite career has now become a joke to people, even though a lot of us still have respect for what he accomplished. But I think the fact that he spent a good amount of years and what was left of his good years just doing absolutely nothing, I don't think that helped him any. So I hope Kemba does not choose to just take money and just wither away while this team never brings him anything. And of course, there's going to be tons of teams interested in him. The Lakers will probably give him a shout. The Mavericks was one place we were talking about earlier, although they were saying, why would you do that when you want Luka to control the ball most of the time? And then what about the Suns? The Suns need a point guard, right? Although I think the thing with them is they're going with the draft, so they're probably going to try to get their point guard there. So we'll see what happens, but you got to think that he's leaving the Hornets, because if he was so deflated that they didn't do anything throughout the trade deadline, then why would you sign a contract and re-up and stay there for years and waste what's left of your career, of your prime career anyways? So that's what we got on Kemba. Also a question from Chris. He probably saw me ask this question on Twitter earlier, so we can talk about it here, is would be getting swept by the Blazers this year have a huge impact on Westbrook's legacy? So a sweep is probably not on the table anyways. It's just kind of something where I was spitballing this morning, just throwing some ideas out there since the Blazers have kind of grabbed this series in a way that we didn't think they would. I think most people thought the first two games would be split, but they dominated that second game. So now we're saying, man, what if this is just really Lillard's time right now and they go out and they sweep Westbrook and the Thunder? Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but if it did, could you imagine? What I said was, could you imagine the slander on Westbrook? Because Westbrook already gets slandered. People talk about the stat padding and, of course, the basketball IQ. There's all types of things people talk about with Russ. But then imagine this year where most people think, or at least coming into this series, thought that Westbrook is a little bit better than Damian Lillard. And what if Damian completely outplays him and then the Thunder are swept, which would be their second year in a row where they had a disappointing first round exit. And it would also mean that Westbrook has not won a playoff series without Kevin Durant. So yeah, this would be something that Westbrook would have to seriously bounce back from, because I think what a lot of people are getting frustrated with, myself included, is that he's shown in games like with the Spurs earlier this year, the one that was like double OT and I believe the Thunder won, he's shown that he could be a championship point guard. I even made that video after saying that he could easily be a championship point guard, but on most nights he's not. It's just little things that he does. For instance, the other night in the Blazers game, there was 2 minutes left in the quarter and they were on a fast break and then he pulled up for three. And it's just things like that that just irritate me, because he's so talented, but why? What's with that shot? He's not a good three-point shooter. You're on a fast break. Rest of the team is not down the floor yet. Why take that shot? And so it's things like that that add up over the course of the game. Of course, especially when you get to the very end of it and maybe they need a two-pointer, but then he just pulls up an errant three. It's just the most frustrating thing in the world. So yeah, for that reason, this year could be very crucial, because depending on how bad the Thunder are beat this year, if they do lose, people are going to be they're going to feel really validated on a lot of the things that they've said about him. So that's where we are with Westbrook. Let's see what happens tonight. I'm anticipating they're going to get probably both OKC games, but you never know with the way these playoffs are going. Next question asks, what do the Celtics do if Kyrie leaves? That would be the dire situation, because of course that is our best player. And that would kind of leave them in a predicament, because then you have a decision to make. A report I read earlier this year around the trade deadline was saying regardless of what Kyrie does, Danny Ainge wants to go after Anthony Davis. And that is a serious risk, because if Kyrie leaves, you could still say you have a great team. Then you get more shots for guys like Jason Tatum, who probably clearly needs it. So do you do that? Do you end up trading a Jason Tatum? Because it's going to take him in that deal. If Kyrie is gone, do you end up trading Jason Tatum for Anthony Davis, or in a deal for Anthony Davis, when Davis could still just up and leave next year? And if there is no Kyrie here, then Anthony Davis is more likely to leave next year, I would say. So then you're looking at possibly jeopardizing your future for no good reason. That is a decision Danny is going to have to make. Typically, I tend to be a risk taker. I don't like being out in no man's land. I don't want to just be a very good team with no real star. So I'm gonna keep it real with you. I think if Kyrie leaves, I kind of agree with the go after Anthony Davis scenario one way or the other. Cause it's just how the playoffs work. You gotta have a star. There's no such thing as, well, I won't say no such thing. Every once in a while, you'll have a team like the Pistons who have really good players, and it's more of a team thing and they go to win a championship. But has that even happened since Detroit? We're now in the super team era. Some stars are going to join together. You need a star. So I don't want to be in no man's land forever. Don't really know that I'm patient enough to wait for Jason Tatum to become that guy. Yeah, I want to go after AD either way, but we'll see what Danny decides. And for the last question, I guess we can round this out with a conversation we normally have, but it's had some updates, at least some cryptic updates. Andrew was asking, do you think Klay or KD will leave the Warriors? Again, this is something that I have talked about frequently, so nothing really new here. No, I don't think Klay is leaving, but I just did want to throw in for fun here a couple of things that happened with KD this week, because there were some video snippets going around. One of when Steph Curry was going to shoot the ball in warm-ups and he was playing around and KD just had the most blank look on his face. But that one, that's just whatever, he could be in his zone. I'm not reading too much into that. But then there was another one. I think they were on the 60 Minutes show and they were talking to 5 Warriors players about keeping the team together and if they could imagine ever playing anywhere else after having been a part of something so perfect. And Steph Curry, Sean Livingston, and Iguodala, they were all laughing. They were all happy-go-lucky about it. They were like, yeah, no, we really couldn't imagine anything else. Then you had Klay Thompson, who always kind of looks nonchalant, so you can't read in too much into what's going on with him. Like I said, I think he's staying with the Warriors. But then KD. Again, while everyone else is laughing at the question and Iguodala is saying, oh, these guys are young, but when you're my age, no, you can't imagine it and all this stuff. KD is looking down, he's fiddling his hands, he's got a look on his face like he's not enjoying this conversation at all. His expression was really, it raised some questions for that situation. Now, at this point, just because I brought this up and it's all hypothetical stuff and we don't really know what's going on, you do want to bring up that it's only been probably a month or so since his really close friend died. So it could just constantly be him, thinking about his friend, grieving. That could be anything, right? Anything could be on his mind. Of course, when we're talking about free agency, it's not a good look that they're having a free agency conversation and he looks like he's just done with it. But you have that. There was a survey of NBA players at the end of the season and some crazy percentage of them thought that KD was going to the Knicks. We have the thing with KD's burners and we know he cares what people think, or at least that's just the energy he gives off when he's answering people through burners, and it just gives off that energy like he's not totally happy with what he's done here. Again, that's just the energy it's giving off. So for Klay, no, but for KD, maybe it's just us being hopeful that this is the end of Golden State, but this is his 3rd year. Maybe this is it. But that is just something we will have to wait and see. We've got a little under 3 months until free agency, so let's keep our fingers crossed. So that is it for this week. Make sure to catch the show on Spotify and iTunes with the links in the description if you don't enjoy watching this on YouTube. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to the channel name if you want notifications when this comes out every weekend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.